So recapping from the previous session, Judith left with her crew and sailed south to Carlisle to parley with the Viceroy Broga Ironbend, sway him to support the Anarchs. Unfortunately, Judith's history caught up with her, and Isaac Lavelle had already poised Broga against her. After a brief debate, Broga sided with Lavelle, and Judith was forced to flee from the ensuing capture. Elined, meanwhile, met with Anarchs to discuss plans for dealing with Basileus and Sebastian. Our Anarch contact departed, intending on bringing back an authority that could continue this discussion with a more military mind. Meanwhile, Robert in the far north made a trade with a Norwegian Cainite to learn the ritual for summoning the Einherjar, at the cost of half a dozen nuns. As well as her mother superior. It also had other costs for Robert. And before I forget, Robert, because you botched that, you will be taking a loss of 1 dot to your conscience, as well as a derangement, which will come up at a dramatically appropriate time. Nicholas had another vision of something, an omen, of some terrible thing. And seeking insight from the prickly Simone de Champs, he had a revelation, some little-known trinket in the form of a book that was once possessed by Robert, could be a key to understanding his vision. Now we will follow Nicholas as he makes his travels west out of London, following the Thames to what sounds like the last location known for Robert's herd and his carriage of belongings, possibly this trinket. It's around August 1456, and Nicholas, you've followed the trail from what you've heard of rumors and working the streets, that this cottage exists in a village called Brentford. It's a very small collection of homes, subsistent farmers, and you finally come upon what you think must be the village by description, right off the river of the Thames. It's about halfway between London and Windsor Castle, about 10 miles out both ways. So the surrounding area is peaceful and green, with many trees of various sizes and low-lying shrubbery. And this cottage is fairly large. You can see as you approach on one of these evenings, it looks like they have a small farm and garden surrounding it. You also note what looks like maybe a dilapidated, somewhat broken down carriage that's been picked apart for pieces and supplies. Most of the remaining pieces kind of lean against one wall of the stone cottage. There are some lights on, you can tell from inside. It's fairly early in the evening. So what do we see when we turn to Nicholas?
Nicholas is standing away from the cottage, his hands behind his back, taking in all the sights regarding the broken down carriage and the rest of this ramshackle place where supposedly Robert's people have found themselves. He can't help but feel amused. How far the mighty can fall when their master's favor is gone. But soon enough, he's striding toward the door with purpose, prepared to knock like a civilized person.
Alright, after a brief rattle on the door, you can hear some movement from inside. Some steps on wooden floorboard, and then the door creaks open. And I think you've traveled with Robert enough that you've seen this man before. He's a strong-looking man with long, dark brown hair and a big beard. He looks like an outlander, some kind of survivor off the land. Perfect for this environment. He is clad in a light leather tunic and breeches. You think this man was called Guy de Free, you think it was. He opens a door a bit and looks you up and down. Can I help you, sir? Perhaps we've met before.
We have indeed, in Robert's company, I think.
Is he... well, do you hear from him?
Not of late. But one might ask the same of you. What has led you to stay in this ramshackle cottage?
Well, a series of unfortunate events. Our master went traveling to the north. That was quite some time ago. I was in charge of keeping his other companions well-to-do, but of limited coin myself and of his diminished, financial state. It's been very trying, and we have lost a number along the way to reach this, but I thought I would rely more on my older trade skills to protect what I could. And so we eventually found our way out here. We lost more to disease and famine, unfortunately, but his voice trails off as he looks down, dejected.
Would he be unhappy to hear it, do you think? Or has he left you here to die?
His eyes shoot up again. No, he would never do that. I am sure that whatever travels he takes are simply taking a very long time. He has treated myself and Heather quite well. But I'm sure he will be back some night.
A pity, really. It is so hard to find good, loyal help these days.
Yes, well, what brings you this way at this night, traveler?
Altruism, I should think. I had heard of your plight, you see. And I figured I might be able to lend some aid. In exchange for a bit of help from you, of course.
Well, I suppose it depends on what kind of aid you need. I am quite needed here.
Nothing really that should trouble you a trifle. An old book.
He kind of looks at you confused.
You might have seen it. It was often kept wrapped.
I think I know the very book, but what on God's earth would you want with that?
It is a subject of much intellectual curiosity. And since Robert doesn't seem to need it, I was hoping that I might be able to borrow it.
My master took great pains to keep it covered and sealed away. I imagine he valued it quite a bit. Can you truly speak on behalf of good intent that you will return this as a friend of his?
On my word of honor.
Alright, Nicholas. I'm gonna let you...
Oh yeah, that's a lie.
Okay. I was going to check. It was either going to be a lie check or a empathy convince him check. So manipulation subterfuge.
Alright, and he's got devious going on.
Alright, that'll definitely apply.
What's the difficulty?
I'll put it at 7. Make it a straight check.
Well, not a botch.
Not a botch. He looks at you and he kind of grits his teeth, a little uncertain, looking at you sidelong and looking you up and down. If it's all the same, traveler, I apologize. I forget your name, but perhaps if when Master DeVere returns, I'm sure he can settle this with him. The book will be in safekeeping until then.
He is not going to return. And with that, I'm going to use Dementation 1 on him to stoke his fear and uncertainty about that.
Alright. Give me one moment.
It'd be nice if I had my book ready, but I'm getting it right now.
Alright, Incubus Humor. Inflame his fear. Technically it's supposed to be a humor, but I think that's can be put into one of the humors. I'm not gonna make you call it out. So give me a manipulation empathy. Your difficulty will be 7. Oh, actually, hang on. No, your difficulty will be 5. Three successes. So successes here will extend the duration. Alright. So about a night. You feel the power behind your words strike him. And you can see that he shifts uncomfortably at your words. It has been some time. I didn't think to alert him to where we were going. Well, maybe he won't find us. You can see he kind of puts his hand through his hair as he speaks more to himself in thought.
That is where I can help you, my friend. I can find you a better place to lay low. Some food to eat and water to drink.
He looks to you and you see a glimmer of hope in his eyes.
Come now, you know me. You know I am not Robert's enemy. I'm one of his oldest friends. Leaving out the part, of course, that Robert loses more friends than he makes.
Alright, since you stoked his fear, I will let you make another attempt at lying to him. Give me another manipulation subterfuge. Difficulty will still be 7. It's teetering on the edge.
And with devious, that's 3.
3 successes. You see his muscles slacken as though defeated, or as though something weighing and burdensome upon him is finally overtaking him. Truth be told, I do not know if I can support what remains. Aid would be very useful for keeping the remainder of this group alive. And he says this in hushed tones, and you can see he's kind of pulled the door back, so it's just the two of you speaking, and the inside is not as privy to the discussion.
Were you given leave to approach the estate of Ellyn Alice?
My master had good contact and relations in the past. I believe he told us to go there in search of aid, but when we arrived, we were turned away at the door. Back then, there were many of us. Now there's barely a handful.
So times have changed. I could put in a word with her.
His eyes narrow a bit, and he folds his arms. Begging your pardon, sir, but I wouldn't much care for sharing the same roof as the woman who turned down and caused the deaths of all these people.
You must understand the times we're living in, Master Defree.
I suppose I'm not in a position to ride my high horse these days. Perhaps we will have to accept such difficulty.
If you do wish to stay here in this hovel, he looks around. Perhaps I might aid you at least in repairing it to better standards.
Were you a carpenter or mason by trade?
No, but I have resources at my disposal. Such men can be hired.
Well, that would be very promising. And much needed hope and glee to these people. He nods a couple times. If you can provide such resources, and you promise that the book will be returned to Master de Vere's property, I suppose loaning it out to be read wouldn't hurt.
You are most pragmatic and generous. He will bow. And of course, it is my greatest pleasure to bring joy to the hearts of others.
Now, begging your pardon my asking, but as I recall, I only ever saw you during these hours, so I've taken to the assumption that you and my master share a similar condition.
You know of your master's condition?
Well, I've never been told specifics, but over the time I followed him, I learned enough.
Ah, well, I can assure you I'm not ill. Your master and I are of different blood. I merely enjoy the night times. They're quieter and easier to think.
As you say, I will see about fetching that book then.
Most gracious.
He opens the door a bit more to slide back in before closing it. You hear some low voices. You think a woman, or perhaps women. And a few minutes later, the door creaks open again. And you can see that It looks like Guy is now holding a bundled something. Looks like some very plain, poor cloth is holding a small shape in his arms. I would caution you, there is something very queer about this. This text, it has an effect. Something very unwholesome. I thought better to ask the local father, lest we be burned at the stake for having this, but I would avoid touching it directly.
I will do so. And I will see for myself if it was truly written by one of the devils of hell.
Even after all this, you can see he's very reticent to hand over the book, which really just looks like a pile of cloth to you. But after a couple of pauses, he reaches out, extending it to you.
There, everything will be all right now. Tomorrow evening you shall see the first hints of my humanity.
You're quite the saint. I have to say, I very much appreciate this. You've likely saved some lives.
That's what I have asked for. I am, after all, a physician.
He smiles at that. Apologies. I don't quite recall your name.
My name is Edgar.
I could have sworn it was something else. Edgar. He nods a couple times. Well, I hope to see you again some night. Preferably, not too long from now. He looks down at the book again.
And in better circumstances for yourselves.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And he closes the door.
Nicholas gives the door one last long look. Whatever wickedness brewing in his mind not showing on his face. As he takes the book and departs, anxious to take a look.
Where does Nicholas depart to with this bundle?
He'll return back to his quarters at Elined estate.
Alright. It will probably take you not most of the night, a good portion of the night, given that I'm pretty sure you're not riding. It's 10 miles, so it's not very far, but you probably could get back before the end of the night.
He'll do his best. If it seems like he's not going to make it, he'll dig himself out a hidey hole somewhere.
Alright.
Or perhaps if anyone's traveling back to town. This is a road that I'm on?
It's kind of it's not a very well made road, it's kind of a dirt road. Mostly for villagers trying to get back to London. This isn't one of the main veins to trade centers.
Well, if no one comes, no one comes. He'll go on foot.
Alright, so the scene fades on you returning to London. We'll pause for there. Meanwhile, we'll check in with another member of the group. Elined, you have been patiently waiting for the return of the Anarchs to discuss plans for Basileus and Sebastian. It takes a bit more than a fortnight before you are once again approached in Birmingham. What is Elined doing during that time as she has to wait for the return?
She is doing her best to keep a low profile, but keeping an eye out for any suspicious activity. After all, their contact not that long ago stated that there were other kindred in the area. And this was the same general area that Judith abducted from.
Indeed it was. Given that you are making a low profile, give me a wit stealth standard difficulty. Alright, 2 successes. Not much for socializing, not much for building contacts. You stick to yourself, keep your hood raised, keep quiet. Looking here and there, not really bothering anyone. Feeding discreetly as needed. You keep a low profile successfully. And it is a little bit more than a fortnight before you are contacted, much as you have been the last couple times. Robert Dufour finds you somehow, despite your best efforts. And fortunately, in your favor. And he leads you from one of your previous meeting locations that you've established with him in the past. And he leads you out away from town to a farmer's house, telling you that there is a meeting and that someone with authority has been brought that can speak with you.
She will go along, though she will do so cautiously.
All right. So Robert Dufour leads you to this farmhouse, and you're within sight of the town of Birmingham. You're up on some tall hills that look down. The area you've passed is mostly pastoral farming, many sheep, mostly asleep right now. And you enter a quaint little house at the top of one of these hills, and Robert Dufour kind of leads you inside. It's very dim inside. There are a few candles and lanterns that provide some lighting. As you step inside, you see that there's not a whole lot of space. There is a small hearth that's not lit, and a couple well-armed men that appear like brigands, but they stand very still. They're either very well disciplined or perhaps not alive. And in the darkness of the corner of this cottage is a small table and a figure which you can barely make out. Field Marshal Elined, please take a seat.
Of course. And she will go and do so. I do not believe I have had the pleasure of meeting you before.
The woman in front of you, this apparently young woman, very petite and in trim black dress and jet black hair. It seems to naturally blend into the shadows, but given your age and your familiarity with your own gifts, you suspect that some of these shadows have been manipulated to further enhance her appearance and make her blend in better. As she speaks across the table, I'm Ellyn Alice, one of the leaders of the Anarch Revolt.
And it seems we are of the same clan as well.
I had heard a rumor of such. You'll have to forgive the presence of my guard here. Without the presence of Judith, I cannot speak to much trust in your kind.
Of course.
I am told you have intentions upon Basileus, that there was some news which changes things. I would rather hear this straight from you than secondhand.
Indeed so. Are you aware of the Prince Sebastian?
I know of him.
In the last gathering of the princes, he has implicated himself between that and the evidence that came forward. He is, at least as far as the other princes are concerned, in league with Basileus.
She looks to Robert Dufour, who stands at your left flank, and you can faintly tell him nodding at this before she looks back to you. Well, this does complicate things.
Indeed so. More complicated is the fact that he uses gifts to escape, so he is likely barricaded in his own city and preparing for what will come.
I do wonder, were you present at that meeting?
The one where the latest one, the one I speak of, yes, I was.
And among all those gathered, he was not apprehended.
They were moving to do so, but he managed to escape.
And the Malkavian, was she there? Octavia.
Indeed so. All of the princes, save Barbaros, were there.
Do you find it curious that one as old as she was unable to detect him?
Yes, I do, but that is an entirely separate matter. Our city itself is all.
I simply point this out in the hopes that we deal not with one prince, but two.
Oh, we are already going to have to deal with two. There's Barbaros. He is being manipulated by Basileus' underlings, and if we move against him, then the other piece will likely move as well.
Who manipulates Barbaros? How
His
know you of this?
assistant, the supposed Tremere at his side. That is the one who holds power in that city. Barbaros is nothing more than a puppet.
Make a perception empathy roll, standard difficulty.
Should detail-oriented apply?
Sure. Alright, 2 successes. It's very brief, and it's difficult to see in the darkness, but Ellen's eyes glance to Robert Dufour very briefly when you mention this Magister. How certain are you of this information?
Entirely.
What is your source?
First, there was Barbaros's brother, then there was contact that I'd rather not divulge the name of for the sake of his safety. Then there was the papers that recently came forwards. 3 sources that point to it, unless I'm forgetting one. Oh, no, 4 sources, 4 sources. I briefly forgot the details that I was given. As far as things I had to use for negotiation to get this, truce going. That was something the Serpent himself admitted, did he not, that he had an ally?
Thank you for bringing this to us. Let us return to the topic at hand. Basileus, Norwick, and Sebastian. Robert briefly told me you had concerns about your approach to deal with Basileus.
It is less concerns and more, since we are at current against a common foe, it would be best suited if both sides had a say in how we approach this from a military standpoint. It would be taken quite poorly if one side made, and, well, all of the decisions as far as the way people move.
A diplomatic consideration. How unlike the Covenant. You do a poor job of reputation for your faction.
I have not considered much as far as reputations were concerned. If I was concerned with that, I never would have made my military incursions throughout Europe when I was significantly younger.
She smiles briefly, but it's forced. Regarding Basileus, if he is like any of the rest of your elders, it is likely his scale of plans operate on a span of decades, not months or years. It is
Indeed.
also likely everything he has prepared has taken much time to prepare, and the disruption by you and your companions, and the Covenant, has most probably advanced his timetable rapidly. I suspect time is on his side, and the more we give him, the stronger he will become.
That was my thought as well. The way I see it, we have two options. Either we wait for the hostilities to resume between the noble houses and, well, lure Barbarossa's forces down to the general area to serve as cover, or we seize the moment and have a more covert yet elite force go in and try to handle things.
That is my assessment as well. A co-occurring siege by the Yorkers or some such cover would be enough. Would bring enough reason for your Covenant to crush the city. Although a smaller group might be more efficient, I have concerns about that. How familiar are you with Norwich?
That is the problem. I am not. Nor are my compatriots terribly informed of it. It was not one of the cities that we had to go to for our investigations, which, in hindsight, should have been a kind of red flag.
She smirks a bit. Well, I am. Naturally, my scouts have collected on information from every Covenant capital city, though I never thought I would be sharing it to aid the Covenant.
When the plots of elders are concerned, things change in ways often not expected.
I can tell you the city encompasses all of its inhabitants behind its great walls. The land beyond the walls is untouched by law. It is connected by the port town of Great Yarmouth. This is a well-patrolled path. They hold Elysium in a small Dominican chapel undercroft called All Hallows Convent. But Sebastian very rarely holds court there. The city is wealthy and dense, packed in, but the Canaanites there are not prone to much socializing. We know only of 3: a Cassandra, an artisan, and a usurper, which deign to show themselves plainly in Elysium. However, with a Nosferatu prince more willing to empathize for the plight of his kind, it is said many priors may dwell there in secret.
That could be troublesome, those unseen having eyes to report back.
Precisely my thought. There was something else. My scouts, when they were there, could not shake an eerie feeling. They all agreed. It was as though they missed something great and obvious. like someone who is sneaking that knows they've been seen, though they were never intercepted or stopped. There is something strange about Norwick, whether Basileus chose it for that very reason, or because he is the cause of it. I would not recommend any small group attempt any nighttime skirmish. As someone very familiar with attacking from a place of familiarity and advantage, I think a small group without intimate knowledge of the city would be walking into a bloodbath.
So with that, our best option would be to wait for hostilities to resume. Or manipulate things in order to get them moving sooner.
If you are here to request my recommendation, I would recommend the latter. As I said, waiting likely only advances his timetable even more than we have.
Indeed.
If Sebastian was outed publicly at this meeting you all had, I imagine it will not be long before the princes send word across the Covenant cities. They will have some response. They will want some control. They always do.
They already want control. That is why they have been... Well, that is why at the meeting they have placed more importance on my planning. Oh. I do not recall if I have mentioned this, but said papers, said evidence that came forth that implicated the prince. Those came from Mercer's stronghold.
A reliable source as any. Could you get more, do you think?
Seeing how it was within the city itself, I think that the security will be significantly heightened.
Indeed. If things are as you say, this risks open war between the cities, which has not happened in over a century. Longer than that. The roads between cities will not be any safer than they have been. I'd recommend you consider that the next time you must go somewhere between capitals.
I shall.
She smiles for a moment, It amuses me that I now counsel one of the Covenant's greatest weapons on how to protect herself. What interesting nights.
Let's just say I am confident in my own abilities of escape. It is a method that you, as one of our clan, should be fully aware of.
I am fully aware that there are many ways to hunt a Cainite, and I am not so bold as to think I am above needing protection. Perhaps the haughtiness of the Covenant has infected you, after all.
Or perhaps the need to keep a low profile in a hostile area took precedence.
Did you have any further topics to discuss here?
No, I do not.
I will have Robert check back at Birmingham periodically. I expect you will have some work to do on advancing conflicts.
Indeed so.
You have until January.
I will keep that in mind. And with that, she will rise to leave.
Robert steps out of your way, letting you depart. And you leave uneventfully, stepping out into the open air of the fields, the pastoral farmland around you. What are Elend's plans now?
Elined needs to make travel plans to go to York. She has some strategizing to do with Ragnar.
All right. About 120 miles north by carriage, which I'm assuming what you're taking. It should take you about a fortnight to get up there. I'm still gonna very roughly hand wave it to say somewhere August 1456 by the time you make it to York. We'll put a pin in that for now. Watching Elined depart, scene fading. Meanwhile, Robert DeVere, you finished speaking with Dorothy, warning her of impending conflict in York, so that she would be spared before you return north to summon the Einherjar. Does Robert have any other plans before he departs?
Other than securing the items he needs to proceed with the ritual while he's there, with the help of Dorothy. I don't believe so.
Dorothy is helpful in finding what you describe. Cold iron, she takes to assume you mean some kind of sword, which she procures for you, and the skull she managed to acquire from one of the mausoleums of noble houses who have entombed their ancestors and probably do not check very frequently on the state of their remains. And so you take the skull of one of these lesser nobles. All you need now is a fresh sacrifice. Yeah, I assume you mean to take that when you return to Kirkwall, or do you want to bring one with you?
He'll bring one with him on his travels.
Alright. Describe to me how Robert goes about convincing a stranger to follow him to the Orkney Islands.
With the powers of the blood, and then feeding them a little blood to further the effect.
That's fair. Your stats are high enough that I'll forego the roll. It'll just be a matter of time until you get someone, and probably not that much time, in fact. So we'll say that you get a young man hoping for adventure. He doesn't have much for him in Yorkshire, son of a farmer, expected to be a farmer, but wants to go on an adventure. And hearing your tales and charisma and telling him about the opportunity that lies in the far north, in the hard lands, foreign, they fill him with excitement. He's never left Yorkshire. And empowered by the gifts of your blood, that's more than enough. His name will be Albert Desjardins, the human sacrifice. Alright. With your current resources, it isn't a difficulty with getting a ship. The difficulty is with getting a ship that will take what you can offer, and that just takes time. So you end up having to wait more than a few days before you find a trade ship that will take you. It just occupies some time of you waiting. Fortunately, it's not a ship, a fishing ship, so you're not stuck under boxes of fish, but it is boxes of large crates of hay, and so you smell faintly of horse by the time you return to Kirkwall. The boy, Albert Desjardins, he seems a little put off by being stuffed into the cargo hold of a bunch of straw and wheat, and grain, and hay. But being promised adventure, it's a minor sacrifice. So you and Albert arrive in the port of Kirkwall a number of nights later, and he seems eager to explore and find something to slay, or something to find, something heroic. He's not very strong, but he feels excited, emboldened.
So be it.
One moment, I'm gonna give you something. Let me give you the... I may have already given this to you, but let me double check. I may not have. I did not. Alright, I've given you the ritual incantation. And to refresh you, the ritual requires you to arrive at the top of a large sea stack that juts out of the ocean just offshore. And while holding cold iron in one hand and a skull in the other, this must be chanted, this ritual, after fresh human blood is poured over the resting place in a runic sigil carved into the ground with the blood. This, supposedly, will summon the Einherjar. And you and Albert are in Kirkwall. What do you do?
Robert will hype Albert up that there is a treasure buried at the top of a sea stack. So that will be their destination. He'll check if he's not going to just go there without any supplies or anything. At least something that would be reasonable to Albert. He's not going to just go without anything. So maybe he'll stop at the inn, see about getting some food for the travel, and go from there.
Alright, give me a resources roll, difficulty 6. Stretching what little coin you have pretty thin. No success. Searching your pockets, the fare, traveling, that's just about dried you up. You don't have quite enough to pay for meals and supplies. The boy has only a few silver of his own. Fortunately, he can feed himself, but not for very long. He's a little dejected at the thought that you can't even pay for meals now. And he's a little skeptical that they're going to have enough supplies, that you will have enough supplies to adventure.
Of course, assure him that he's been there before, and go to negotiate with the innkeeper.
Alright. You've met him before, only you were wearing you were wearing nice clothes, but you smelled of fish.
Mm-hmm. This time of hay.
This time of hay. What do you negotiate for?
Just simple provisions. Obviously, he paid well last time, and he's going to pretty much assure the man that he's good for it.
let me just look at your sheet. Alright, are you using any gifts for this, or are you straight negotiating, just convince him that you're good for it?
He'll start without gifts. If he gets issues with that, he won't hesitate to use gifts.
Alright, give me a... I'll let you choose. I'm gonna go manipulation commerce. Standard difficulty.
Okay.
Unless you think there's another way you can go about this.
And commerce makes sense for nailing out the gritty details.
To success. Alright, you managed to convince him that this time he can let a few things go, knowing that you've been a customer in the past. You probably will be a customer in the future, but he's keeping an eye on this tab. So he sets you up with some basics, a tent, a little sleeping pad, some pots and pans he doesn't really use anymore, a couple ingredients for some rations, a couple loaves of bread, just the things you'd need to survive out there for a little bit of camping, a little bit of ranging. Fortunately, seeing you negotiate successfully does instill some more optimism in Albert. He's pretty confident now he backed the right horse.
All right. Well, assuming time isn't too much of a factor, and actually, how far is the travel? Would the travel be?
Like how long to the sea stack?
Mm-hmm.
It's not terribly far. It is, let's see. Yeah, the sea stack is just about 200 feet off the western coast of the mainland island. I'm sorry, of the southern island. It'd probably take you a few nights of travel. And the biggest danger to Robert, which is immediately apparent, is there are no real inns out here. This is kind of the backcountry. So whereas in the past, riding from one city to another, you could count on inns to stop at for the sun, you can't count on that out here. And so a few days and nights of travel means a few days and nights of finding places to hide during the day. Now, you do have a tent, but little else. Now supposedly there are small villages here and there which survive on the outcroppings of this very bare land, but you don't really know where they are, or if they even speak French.
Well, obviously, it seems best to get the layout from Sigurd.
You can't find Sigurd over the couple nights that you're in Kirkwall, nor do you see any nuns, although you do pick up a city gossip or town gossip that the disappearance of multiple sisters from a local chapel have caused a big panic. That's big news for the town. It's disappeared. There's no bodies, there's no sign of anything. Were you looking for information about where these villages might be?
Yeah, or any safe terrain where they could spend the day. That
So-
kind of information.
Sure. Since you already chatted up the bartender and have kind of built some rapport, I will say that, assuming you ask about it, he will tell you there are some small villages here and there between Kirkwall and this sea stack you're looking for, but some of them are not very friendly to outsiders. Some of them follow the very old ways. They never were Christianized. They remain pagan. Some of them might speak French, but they could also be very violent to the wrong sort. And as remote as things are out here, there would not be much for anyone to do if they turned violent. It's quite a wild area during this time. So you're given the locations of these villages, but he admits he doesn't know which ones are friendly or not.
Okay. Well, I guess when he gets there, he'll just kind of read the situation.
All right. This is the adventure that Albert's looking for. Violent savages, pagans. That's what he signed up for. Maybe spread some Christianity to this land, do God's work.
Albert certainly gets to carry a sword.
All the more exciting.
And maybe just a moment of just showing him what end to hold and basics.
Yeah, Robert is trained in the sword, certainly more than this boy is, and so he readily consumes the knowledge you provide. By the end of it, you know he doesn't really know how to handle a sword, but he feels more confident that he can.
All right. Will is all it takes.
Okay. So you set out for the sea stack, stopping at one of these villages in the meantime.
Yeah, he'll stop at one of these villages in the meantime.
Okay. And I'm assuming you're writing.
If he was able to procure 2 horses, I guess Albert can just tag along on foot.
With your coin, I would say the barman, being especially generous, would loan out 1 horse. It's not a very good horse, and he expects that if anything happens to the horse that you'll pay up. That'd be a lot of coin. But the 1 horse would be enough for the 2 of you, for him to ride in the back.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as the horse isn't too overburdened carrying supplies and the 2 of them.
It's a pretty stout horse. Pretty strong. It's just not particularly fast. It should do for a short journey.
Alright.
So the 2 of you set out on your horse. Hang on. Your horse's name will be Emmett, in case you were wondering. Emmett the horse. So you ride out on Emmett with Albert, And after about a night's ride, Albert asks a couple times, why don't you wait until the day when it's easier to ride? What answer do you give him?
Give him the answer that if we travel at the daytime, it will be easier to be spotted by pagans and overwhelmed.
That makes perfect sense. He stops pestering you after that. Enthused by your charisma and answers. You do, after a day of riding, or rather a night of riding, make it to what you see in between a pocket of these hills. And again, there are no trees at all on these islands. It's pretty wind-stripped lands of just rolling hills here and there. It's mostly fishing out here, and so you find kind of along one of these streams, in between some of the hills, there are some lights. And you see what look like some cottages put together, but not like ones you've seen in the past, like on the mainland in England. They look a bit different. And I would say you haven't traveled quite enough to recognize the style, but they look kind of like wooden shacks, and then there's kind of one long wooden house that seems to dominate the collection of wooden shacks. And you can see, as you get a little bit closer, there are what looks like drying racks with lots of fish, some fires. There are a couple stands, look like kind of wooden spears in the ground, and at the top there are these decorative bindings, twine collecting bone and coral and skulls. Not human skulls, mostly animal skulls. Maybe a few vermin, fish bones. You don't see any crosses. There are a couple people milling about the fires, talking idly. They seem not to have noticed you yet.
Can Robert enhance his hearing and hear what they're saying?
Sure. If you enhance your hearing, give me a perception alertness, difficulty 9 minus your aspects. Zero success. Is that really your dice pool?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just making sure. 0 successes. And it's tough. There's a lot of wind. You notice that immediately upon leaving Kirkwall. You're reminded of how much wind there is out here, and it's making it very difficult to pick up on their words. They seem pretty calm right now, and I'm going to say right now you're kind of on a hill overlooking them, and so you still have the advantage of being hidden, but you can't quite hear what's going on.
Robert will pull Albert aside and let him know if we're going to continue this travel, we're most likely going to have to stop at this place in particular. And while they seem to be pagan, certainly, perhaps they are willing to listen. So he pretty much just tells him to be on his best behavior, but if something does go down, they'll be ready.
He looks you in the eye with a confident stare, grasps the hilt of his sword very confidently. I'll be ready. He nods to you, sagely. And he'll lead the horse by the reins, following you.
Now, is there a way to approach where these people will certainly see and Robert can do some universal gesture of peace and whatnot?
Yes, if you circle around, you kind of approach what is basically the front of the village, where it's kind of open, and it's very obvious. People coming from that direction can be seen from quite a ways away, even at night. And so you approach from that direction. What gesture do you give?
Perhaps, well, they'll just like ride down and have a single hand stuck up, and he'll just wave at them. Why not?
Give me a charisma etiquette roll, difficulty 9. You don't really know anything about these Norwegian customs. That is a botch.
Actual botch, alright.
So you approach, kind of waving your hand as this boy is leading this horse, and the men who were kind of talking idly take note of you, and they see you waving your hand, and it must have been something in the way you were waving it, or perhaps the pace you were advancing, or maybe not saying. You're not really sure, but you walk up enough that they see you, and they immediately start shouting. You don't know what the language is, but they run over and grab a couple spears. And you can tell from the shouting that other people are coming out of their wooden huts now.
Rough amount of numbers.
In the first few seconds, maybe a dozen.
Well, seeing such an aggressive response instantly, Robert is going to look at Albert and say, "We need to leave. They're much too aggressive." And he'll start riding away.
Okay. So you're gonna try and get on Emmett, and then get Albert on Emmett and ride away before they can get to you?
Yep.
Alright. Give me a Dex ride. Standard difficulty. Your mastery of horse mounting.
How has Robert been able to manage his blood during this?
I'm gonna say he's been doing okay. For the most part, I don't make any of you check because you're Ancilla, and except where it's dramatically appropriate, I assume you can keep 1-to-1 if you aren't doing anything absurd. Given your extended travel and somewhat being down on your luck, I am... and not having access to your herd, I'm gonna put you at 5 below your maximum. Not starving, but certainly could eat. Unless you have another idea of why it should be higher or lower. I'm open to hearing that.
Yeah, he hasn't fed on Alfred, and he did give him a little bit of blood to kind of get him under the control even further. Sounds fair.
Okay. You want to make that rule?
Yeah, I'll spend a 1 blood point on Dex to enhance this riding.
Okay. Alright, you're going to do fine. We're going to see how Albert the Adventurer does. Okay, Albert gets 1 success. It's not nearly as quick or skillful as you, but he kind of heaps himself up behind you. I'm gonna make 1 more roll. Alright, so you get on pretty quickly, Albert gets on pretty quickly, and you start to ride away. And just as you're riding away, you hear a very brief whistle before there's kind of a sticking sound, and a yell goes out. Ugh! And you feel Albert kind of slacken against you as he falls off the horse. And I'm going to cut the scene right there. As we transition to another part of England. Judith, we catch up to you. You are in Carlisle, and you tried your best to negotiate, but ultimately had to flee. So we last saw you leaping out of Carlisle Keep into the courtyard out of an open window with Isaac Lavelle hot on your heels. And you landing, you hear shouts of surprise and alarm. So to set the scene, behind you is the castle keep you just jumped out of. In front of you is a small stone courtyard, decorative stone fountain in the center. There are 15-foot stone walls protecting this keep and closing it. The walls kind of make a triangle. So the keep is in one corner of the triangle. And ahead and to your right are the walls, more residence spaces for guests and servants. And to your left, the wall opens in a portcullis gate under the barbican. And the portcullis is still open from earlier. So there are well-dressed aristocrats holding lanterns, and you can hear them kind of shout and cry out, running into their residences off to your right, as the guards from behind you and at the portcullis are rushing you. There are also archers on the tower and walls around you, which right now look surprised and a bit confused. They're still catching up. What do you do?
So the guards from the gate are coming towards me?
Yes, so up to your left, there are some guards at the portcullis, and they saw you just jump out of a courtyard, and they see the guards rushing after you from inside the keep. So they've taken the hint that they should do something about you.
How many are coming from the gate?
There's 3 coming from the gate, and there's about 7 coming up from behind you from the keep.
So Judith is going to make for the gate because she's not in the mood for a fight that definitely will break the silence of the blood. She's going to try and evade them and dodge around them as best she can.
Okay. So to dodge around them and clear the distance to the portcullis, I'm going to have you make a Dex Athletics roll. Difficulty 7. You'll need 5 successes to clear the whole distance.
We're going to go ahead and spend 2 blood on Dex then.
Now you can keep making rolls. You don't have 1 shot, but that's the total you need.
Fair.
But obviously things are going to happen during that time as you roll. So go ahead and make your first roll.
Can I get lightning reflexes for this too?
I'll give that to you. So 3 successes. You make a good amount of distance rushing from your landing, sticking the landing, and then immediately bolting off. Meanwhile, somewhere from behind you above, Isaac Lavelle's voice can be heard shouting with astonishing authority and purpose from the open window. "She is a witch, a bride of the devil. Strengthened by hellfire, all good Christians are obliged to destroy her." You hear this voice carry like almost no voice can carry. And at this point, there are more calls for alarm and anger, orders to violence. "Ah, devil in our midst! Protect the women and children, slay the creature! Archers to the tower!" There are bells ringing with great energy, adding to the chaos and the activity of all of this. So you've dodged the guards for now, but now the archers are taking shots. Alright, now I have you roll your soak. Alright. 8 lethal, you soaked 4 of it. There's a ray, or I should say a shower of arrows come flying down to you from these towers. The guards you managed to get out of the way of, but the archers got a lot of good shots as they fill you with arrow fire. So you net 4 lethal. Is Judith still running?
Oh yeah.
Okay, roll again. I'm gonna make it difficulty 6 now since you're not dodging guards anymore. In your periphery, you can tell there's more movement, more activity, people to rush the portcullis to close it. But you're fast enough.
That would be a total of 9 successes.
9 success, more than enough to clear the remaining distance of the portcullis. So you can hear it cranking down, closing quickly, but you're faster and you've already gathered some distance. So despite the severe wounds, that was enough arrows that most people should have certainly fallen down. And there are more cries of astonishment and fear and anger at the sight of this she-devil running with arrows in her back. So it closes right behind you, stopping the guards that were chasing you, ironically.
She's not slowing down.
Alright, you are not quite out of the woods yet. So you make it past the portcullis, and once you're out of this, you're into a mostly open space. It's still part of the castle, but it's a twice as large space. This is enclosed by a curtain wall, part of the castle's fortifications, so along it there are armories, barracks, blacksmiths, more towers. There's supplies for holding out a siege, so grain storehouses. There's also, off to the side, a chapel and a stable. And dead ahead is what you can tell is the last gatehouse until you reach the urban environment of Carlisle itself, and you're back into the city. Now that's quite a ways away, though. I'm going to say 10 successes worth of dexterity athletics. You already cleared 2 of it, so what was that, 7? So I'll give you 7 out of the 10 needed. You bolt through this space. Unfortunately, you do see there are more guards coming out from the next gatehouse and from the towers and the barracks.
Like I said, she's not slowing down. This is either going to be frankly, thanks to Barbaros's lackey / puppet master, this is already a breach of the silence because somebody decided to open fire with arrows in public. But the odds are just not in her favor. There's no way she's going to be able to take on an entire castle full of guards by herself.
Fair. You have made a good distance into this space. You've almost exited the castle now. So you just need to get past this next group of guards charging at you. This looks like another Dex Athletics. And they are going to try and attack you. So I'm going to make this a contested roll. So you can roll your standard Dex Athletics and basically try to weave in and out of them as they charge you basically head on from the gate. You got 5 successes with your lightning reflexes. They got 5 successes without. I'm going to give that to you since you're the defender. So it's very narrow. They actually brush up against you, like swords come down trying to slash at you, but you're very, very narrowly caught by them as you move in and out, pushing and shoving your way. And some of your clothes do get cut up from the near misses. But you don't actually take any hits as you move past them, and with that many successes you will make it out of the gate. So there are still bells ringing and guards chasing behind you now, but now you're back in the urban environment.
Could she, while running, break off the arrows from her back so that she looks a little bit less scary to the common folk?
I will say you have an option. You can stop to do that, or you can try and do that while running, which will make it more awkward and will add difficulty to you escaping the city. Or you can just keep running and have people scream in terror.
Adrenaline is an amazing thing. Anybody who's ever been in combat will know that poorly placed arrows don't necessarily put you down, but she's going to scream. How far away from the port are we?
Unfortunately, this is where it gets tragic. You are on the opposite end of town to the port. You have quite a ways to go. I'm going to say it's like half a mile from here to the port, if it's a straight shot.
What are the odds that there are faces that I saw at the port getting goods?
That are now out and about in this area?
Yeah, probably pretty slim, I would imagine.
Roll a 1d10. Give you a chance. No. Not right now. Maybe you're not close enough to the port.
She's going to see if she can't create some cover anyway. How do I phrase this? She's going to call out to the pedestrians nearby and yell that there is free grain, free supplies, free winter stores, all at the port.
Alright, coming from a woman who is being chased by guards and with a quiver full of arrows in her back, it's going to be pretty difficult, but not impossible. Give me a manipulation. I'll let you choose expression or subterfuge. Difficulty 9.
Not even any 10s in that roll.
You didn't botch. No successes. The sight of you is bewildering and makes a few people take a step back. The sight of you being chased by guards in the distance, it's all very chaotic and confusing. No one really knows what's going on. So when you shout to add to this confusion, it's more just bewildering to people. And so everyone just kind of like huddles together away from you, those who are still on the streets, and get away from the scene. I'm not going to say that took up your action, though, so you can try something else physically.
Is there...
Maybe I can paint this scene for you. Maybe that would help. So, exiting the castle proper, you are re-entering the urban streets of Carlisle. So, there are large inns and houses to your left and right. You're on this kind of street that goes down, like it is a straight shot to the port. It's just a ways away. And so it's a stone pathway. There are other stone pathways that go off to your left and right, but ahead of you are pretty tall buildings, mostly second, 2-story buildings that overlook the streets. It's fairly well lit out. There's people up and down the streets still, a carriage here and there, traders, warehouses in the distance.
Are there any guards in front of me that I can see?
You see, not immediately in front of you, but if you were to continue in a straight path to the port, there are more guards that look like they're being alerted. Not a bunch, but like 3. They're a ways away, though.
Well, I don't see stealthing through the corners doing such a great job.
It is a pretty dense city.
Is it too late at night for me to expect crowds?
It is too late for crowds, unless there were like some event, but you don't know of any events right now. Well, yeah, because you never really been to Carlisle before. I will give you a chance. Do you have any Hearth Wisdom?
I don't.
Let's see what else. Possible that you could think of something. Let's see what's appropriate. If you give me an intelligence theology roll, difficulty 8. Do you have any theology?
I do not.
Oh. Okay, never mind. Those were my 2 ideas, but if you don't have either, then you can't roll knowledge.
I have occult and I have academics. But
no, I was thinking of like a midnight mass equivalent or things like that. But without knowledges of those kinds of things, then you wouldn't really know what to look for, where it's happening, or what time.
well, it looks like my only real option is plowing through the 3 guards down the way.
All right. So yeah, if you keep going the way you are, then you will hit them in basically the next round equivalent. So you want to attack them or dodge them or tackle them?
She wants to get around them. There's too many guards. There's what, half a dozen behind me, 3 more in front, and Lord knows how many coming through the portcullis once they get it up. Yeah, no.
Alright, I will give you the same roll. Dex Athletics. Difficulty here is going to be 7 again. They're not going to try and strike you so much as apprehend you. So I'm going to give them a chance to do that.
One success.
They got 2. So basically treating this as like a grapple in motion. I had a difficulty to them trying to grapple somebody trying to actively dodge.
Can I resist with strength?
You can. Absolutely. Either way, this is going to slow things down.
And just like throw them off?
Yeah, you can do that. They've gotten a hold of you, so...
Can I spend a blood to boost just throw potence as automatic successes there? Or is it too late for that?
I was going to say it's too late, but I'll let you do it. Since it's desperate, I'll let you use your potence after the fact.
Which would give me a total of 5 successes.
Alright, that's barely enough to shove them off. They did hold you down for a few seconds, and that's long enough that you can, on your periphery, kind of shoving them off, you were able to tell some of the guards back there have caught up, and you do see a couple mounted riders heading your way now.
Am I within earshot of the stand that we set up, or no?
No, not even close. Like I said, it is a ways down to the port, and you're just now getting into the streets. I'm gonna say 20 successes, if you want to put a number on it.
Are there any alleys I can duck down that might make the riders a little more useless?
Give me a wits alertness standard difficulty to identify an alley you can use in this moment. I'm gonna make it 7 since you're gonna rush and you're pushing people off. Two successes. Okay, you identify an alley that you can use. You kind of push yourself and realize that the way you push yourself is in between two buildings, and it keeps going. You don't know where it goes, but there's kind of a large warehouse you're just next to, and it looks like maybe an inn of some kind, and it seems like this goes down a path into this street, this side street behind both buildings, and there's, you know, some barrels at the end. Who knows where that goes?
She's taking it. At the very best, at the very worst, it thins their odds a little bit.
Yeah. All right. So you start down that direction. Give me a Dex Athletics to make it down that alleyway and kind of make some distance between them. I'm not giving these guards any specialties, so 4 successes to their 3. You make it. Oh, with lightning reflexes?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that applies here as much. It can't be every roll with Dex. I'll give you the 4, which is still 1 more than they had. So they are chasing after you, but you have some distance on, at least a little bit. And so you get to the end of this alleyway, you see it goes 2 ways, south and north to the port. So south is the direction of the castle, north is a port. This long street going north to south. So the alleyway goes in both directions. It looks like if you go north, the alley ends at maybe halfway.
Does it look like there's a turnout or anything?
It's hard to tell. You think there might be a couple turnouts between here and the halfway mark, and again, it's pretty dim back here, but you think maybe it kind of ends at some building that cuts the alley off, and maybe it rejoins the street at that point.
Yeah, she's gonna try it.
Okay.
You said there were other turnouts that look like they could have rejoined the main street. Something like that?
Yeah. So between here and, if you follow this alley straight north, tell that there are breaks in the building walls, on the left and the right, here and there. So some of those must go back out to the main street. Some of them probably go out into who knows where, other alleys or back ways.
She's going to do her best to turn frequently, left and then right, and then left and then right. So she's kind of zigzagging and making it more difficult for them to tell which way she went.
All right. Gonna have to clear some successes on pursuing to make that distance before they have to check to find you. So go ahead and roll again. Alright. 4 successes. We got 2. Alright, so you're netting 3 on them. And so you're not going in a straight line for the port, you're just trying to lose them in the side streets.
Right, just get around the corner before they can see which corner she got around. Force them to split their numbers up and maybe not keep total watch on which way they're going.
Okay. Roll chance die here. Alright. Go ahead and roll again. I need you to net 5 successes, and then they'll have to roll to see if they can actually find you again. So you're right now at a net of 3. Alright, you lost 2. You're still ahead, but not by much. Basically, every time this happens, I'm testing to see if you run into other guards who are now searching the city for you. And you do. You make a couple turns, and you look back behind you because you realize they're starting to gain on you. When you realize that this alley actually has more guards in it ahead of you. And now there are guards both in front of and behind you. At some point you must have turned too many times. Now they're starting to catch up and filter through the alleyways. So there are a couple of guards ahead of you and 3 behind you. They're lightly armed, as in like armor-wise, but they all seem to have swords and shields out.
Well, it's time to go full on Assassin's Creed then. Up the side of a building.
Up the building?
Yep. We're gonna parkour this.
Alright, describe to me how you want to parkour this.
Well, I'm imagining these are wooden buildings with slats and braces on the outside.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, ample handholds.
For a skilled acrobat, yes, could be a little challenging for you in this much of a rush. Not impossible, again. Just difficult.
Well, she can't go forward, she can't go back. If she stops to fight, she's caught. So the only option I see ahead of me is up and over.
Alright. And I'm sure you've been taking this into account. You're wounded still, unless you
Yep.
choose bleed or blood to heal. So you're still at -2. So to take advantage of whatever natural handholds you can find in this alleyway, give me a dexterity, athletics, difficulty 8. And that's taking into account how hard it is to climb this and how much of a rush you're in. Wrong. Well, actually, we can use that anyway.
I mean,
1, 2, 3. So that's still 4 successes.
Yeah.
Actually. 1, 2. Yeah.
Yeah, unless you want to give me the lightning reflexes, which I don't think applies to climbing.
No, that's more like reactionary. I'm thinking like reactionary things.
Yeah, still 4 successes to
Still,
get up.
yeah, still 4 successes. Very impressive under the circumstances. So you managed to find some low set windowsill that you kind of jump up and grab onto and start to pull yourself up. And there are obviously more calls. There's yelling, there's bells going on, so there's a lot of activity in this town right now. And I'm going to give them a chance to try and grab a hold of you as you're going up, but it will be just as difficult. Alright, so one of these guys manages to grab onto you as you're going up. So you haven't been stopped, but one of them is kind of like pulling at your pant leg, is like hanging on.
What would I roll to shake him loose?
Strength brawl. Contested strength brawl. Alright, no successes, you got 3, so you manage to shake him off. He falls back down onto the stone pavement. And you keep climbing. You climb to the top?
Yep.
Alright, so you get to the top of this 2-story building. You have a much better view of the city. And you can see as the city kind of slopes down from the castle down all the way to the port, this kind of street that slowly changes in elevation. There are quite a few guards and quite a number of mounted riders patrolling now. And they haven't noticed you on top of the building yet. Obviously the ones down the alleyway have. So there is another building further to the north. Like if you're going to go further to your port, to the port, you would have to, climb this building, continue on. Otherwise, you could jump down into another of the main streets off to your left.
She's going to try and stealth along the rooftops.
Okay.
Or just stealth in general.
Are you trying to advance in any direction or just hide up there, or?
She's trying to make it to the port, but she's trying to do so without being noticed.
Alright. So it's going to be kind of more parkour, but stealth parkour.
Right.
Okay. You can keep trying to do that. It will still be difficult.
But it's dark, and there's no one watching me.
It is dark, but people did see you get up there.
And there's chimneys and whatnot. Stovepipes to hide behind.
There are. So if you want to continue along further in the direction of the port, again, it's going to be, after all of your left and right and ducking around, I'm going to say 15 successes to continue on all the way to the port and staying stealthily above everything, parkouring along from one building to the next like Assassin's Creed. So I'll take another Dex Athletics, difficulty 8. You'll have to keep repeating that until you net 15 successes.
we're going to be at this for a while.
Not unless you fail or botch. You can just keep rolling. Actually, I'm gonna do a little check in between your rolls since this isn't uncontested totally. You're managing to not fall. That doesn't mean you're not being searched. You hear some calls from the next row of buildings over. It sounds like someone climbed up a ladder or got on top of some other buildings, and you hear yells. There are some guards that have reached not your lane of buildings going down the street, but the opposite one. And now they are taking note of you. So your stealth factor is gone. They haven't necessarily caught you yet.
Oh. Then she's just going to go full on run in that case.
Okay. Jumping from building to building is still going to be a little bit difficult. So I'll lower difficulty to 7 since you're not trying to hide anymore. Alright, you have 7 successes to go. I'm going to make a roll for them. So they're now taking aim at you again. Alright. A lot of arrows are coming at you. You roll soak. Alright, they're going to net 3 lethal on you. What are you at?
That'll kill me.
About to torpor you?
Well, that'll incap, yeah.
Alright. Unfortunately, you catch too many arrows once they spot you. You manage to get within a few blocks sight of the port when all the arrows collectively just destroy enough of your body to bring your body into torpor. It's too much damage for you to sustain. You are familiar with this feeling, unfortunately, as you are put into torpor. And we will end the scene there, and we will take our break since we're a quarter after. So we'll come back in 15. Alright, I think we're all here now.
Safe to say.
So we will get back into it. Alright. Jumping back to Nicholas, who has returned to London, to Elined's manor, with a book bundled up in some cloth. Supposedly this text that he's been searching for. So, Nicholas, you find your way back to the guest suite that you had at the manor, and you have your bundle of cloth. What you can feel is a book somewhere beneath it. What do you do?
How much time do I have left?
Save a couple hours before dawn.
Then he'll open it up. Well, open up the bundle. And this is where he finds out that he's been betrayed, but that's okay.
Alright, you set about opening it up. And you see it is an old and weathered hardbound pamphlet of faded black covering, bound together by knots of thick string. It's quite small in size, in spite of all the coverings of the cloth. The pages have a faint yellowing beige from use and time. And without touching it, just looking at the edges of the pages, you can tell they're frayed. There's multiple burn marks, suggesting a previous, maybe failed attempt to destroy it. There's no words or symbols on the outside. It otherwise looks unremarkable in the exterior.
Heeding Guy de Free's words, he will use a blanket to open the front cover.
Okay. Carefully, you open the book, and inside you see it is written in Latin. Do you read Latin?
That's a super question.
If you're literate, I'm almost certain you're guaranteed Latin.
Yes, I'm literate.
Okay, then you get Latin. So what you see, what you're reading, it appears to be a series of journal entries. The author describes finding a fragment of a slab of sandstone, which is written in Sanskrit. He apparently found this deep in the ruins of a temple off the coast of the Dead Sea in Palestine. And briefly flipping through it, it looks like the book details the records of this author to summon something, using what the author refers to as a true name. And it details his success in extracting knowledge and power from it, and then ultimately banishing the same entity with the power. This thing is supposed to be known as Krynos.
Nicholas is very interested by this book. Not because he's an occultist, but because... Sorry, my Amazon picked up on that. Oh my gosh, she's picking up everything I say. I don't know why this is creepy. Anyway, back to the book. As I was saying, he's interested in it not as an occultist, because he certainly isn't one, but because of the implications of what it could mean. So he will set about studying it in more detail.
Alright. What is Nicholas looking for? Describe how he goes about studying it.
He's looking through it to see what about it could have been in such interest to Simone. Why she seemed to be afraid of it. Does it have a feeling of dread coming off of it? I have a pretty high awareness.
Yeah, without rolling, there is something unnatural about this book. I actually will take a perception awareness standard difficulty, so you get a little bit more details about how it feels. Any specialties there?
In perception, intuitive.
I'm going to say no for this, but it's still 4 successes. That's still quite a bit. So yes, your overall impression of the book is it's an unsettling feeling. It almost feels alive, or at least you feel some kind of awareness as though it was aware of something. But you don't think that's exactly the case. Although there is something at the periphery of your psyche, like you know there's more in here beyond the words. It reminds you of when you deciphered that code. You knew that there was a way to beat it, that there was something beyond what you were looking at that was of significance. And you have a similar feeling here. There is something more than words on paper here.
With his time limited tonight, he's not going to dive too far into the actual text itself. He's going to look more at the generalities of the thing. First of all, reading its aura.
Alright, you're using Auspex on this book?
Yes.
Okay. To read the soul of this book, I'll give you perception, empathy, difficulty 7.
Okay.
Alright, 3 successes. So normally when you've used this on people, you almost immediately perceive something about them which gives you glimmers of the energy about them, and that tells you things. With this, you encounter something else. It's more like a resistance or a wall that you feel you have to fight through. Roll your current willpower, difficulty 9. This thing is actually fighting you. You've never encountered that before.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Wow.
Wow. 2 successes on difficulty 9. You, as I said, have never encountered anything that has fought back from being perceived. In fact, you didn't even know it was possible. But this thing is resisting. But your mind is sharp enough to pierce whatever resistance it's putting up to being perceived. Examining the book with your powers of insight, there is an aura of almost dark electricity which wraps around it. The faded black of the cover becomes sharper and more intense the more you scrutinize it, until the darkness becomes so deep it seems like a portal into nothingness. You're captivated. You cannot help but peer deeper until the darkness consumes your vision. You're unable to look away. Your body grows uncomfortably warm as you cannot see anything but the darkness. When suddenly there is a light, a surge which illuminates your vision. You see scenes playing out in front of you in rapid succession, one after another. A sorcerer in an occult study, in front of a pentagram, summoning living shadow which fills the room. You yourself feel excitement as it fills the room. But the scene cuts. You then see a new vision, the same sorcerer, haunted and stalked by the shadow as he walks and travels, pestered by it always, it never leaves. The scene cuts away, a new vision. You see the Tower of London set ablaze. The tower rooftop is a scene of bloody carnage and chaos. A winged, bloodied woman dives down, rending soldiers by the dozens. All the while, a sorcerer floats above this, embracing an old man until the old man becomes ash in the wind. The sorcerer falls, and you feel a smug satisfaction watching the sorcerer fall. The scene cuts again. It's a jarring and dizzying pace. You can barely keep up. You see some deep and dark dungeon now. You're witnessing a great battle. The climax of some problem, a winged bat-like creature fighting a man empowered by this unwholesome and dark energy. He's strengthened by it, but then swallowed by a portal of shadow. The scene blurs as you now look upon a nighttime forest of emerald green, a beautiful and serene scene. There's a young, wild, feral-looking girl in an old, tattered dress, kneeling reverently before a twisted and gnarled tree, exuding a living shadow which swirls about it, obviously unnatural. You cannot hear the girl's words, but you understand the promise being made, as though it's being made to you, and you feel a sick and malicious glee as the promise is being made. You see the girl later, wrapped up more rags. She's boarding a small ferry boat, manned by an old and cloaked Welshman. The Welshman looks uncertain. He casts off, departing from the emerald green forest. You seem to watch their departure from the perspective of the forest, as though you are the forest. You watch and gain a sense of greedy hope, watching their departure. Sinister arousal fills you as she departs for some unknown purpose across the water. And the scene cuts, and you return. You see everything around you. You see the book in front of you. Roll your willpower again, difficulty 9. Alright, you take a level of bashing as your mind deals with everything you've just witnessed. Everything this book just showed you that you took from this book. You actually find yourself recoiling from it. describe Nicholas in these moments after all these dizzying visions trying to catch up?
Nicholas, in coming back to himself after this battle of wills with a book of all things, or whatever spirit or spiritual residue inhabits, suddenly finds himself alarmed at being thrust back into the world of normal night, and he throws himself backwards out of his chair, rolling on the ground, pushing himself up against the wall, staring at the book halfway across the room. Not afraid so much as surprised. You are a tempting little thing, aren't you? You won't beat me that easily. He'll stand up, picking up the chair and sliding it back into the desk, looking at the book as he walks around the desk and over to his bed. Tomorrow. He lies down and waits for the sun to come. Many thoughts moving through his head, almost as rapid as the visions he saw.
What thoughts do go through Nicholas's mind as the sun eventually does bring him to torpor?
He thinks about the scene atop the Tower of London and the Winged Woman. That's a sight he's never seen in all his days. And about the sorcerer floating there. And then the woman praying to the tree, wondering if this could have something to do with what happened to Jean-Marc. And then he wonders other secrets he'll plumb from the depths of this thing. Thinking that he really must thank Simone for pointing him to it. It might be just what he's looking for. That this shadow creature he saw in his visions could be the owner of that mob atop the hill.
The day comes and goes as quickly as it ever does, and you arise. You can take off a blood point as you rise, and the scene is much as you left it. The book hasn't moved. It hasn't done anything. It sits on your bedside table there.
You seem to confuse me or frighten me. It won't work. I'm not afraid of you, book. And as if to prove this to himself, he'll actually lay his bare skin on the cover. What harm could it do that it hasn't already done?
When you touch it, you're reminded of the sensation of putting your hand in cool water. Not so much that your hand gets wet, but that you sense a ripple, as though some impression you made sent off something.
He's going to try something he considers quite foolish. Not because it's a danger to him, but just because this is an inanimate object and he's being an idiot. But he's going to attempt to telepathically reach out to it.
short range can you get? So you're going to use Auspex for this?
Aspects 4, yes.
And try and invade the mind of whatever this is.
Or at least open up a dialogue.
You will be rolling Intelligence Subterfuge. Difficulty is going to be 9. Not a
Certainly
botch.
not a botch.
Yeah. No successes. The sensation you've had of reaching to another's mind is one you're familiar with. You know when you can plumb the depths of another's psyche. You also know that despite not making a connection, even the failed attempt felt differently than trying to invade the mind of an ordinary or mundane object. There was something there, but like a lock that has not been picked, you could not open it.
This book is even more intriguing than the scroll, the missive that he translated. He's suddenly alarmed by how obsessed he feels about it. There's something niggling at his consciousness, almost like love. But it can't be, he hasn't felt that in over a century. He'll open up the book and begin flipping through it again. This time with his bare hands.
Again, your hands have that cold sensation. Not that you're necessarily bothered by temperature, but it's obviously a strange thing. You flip through the pages, but now with your bare hands, it seems less like you're moving pieces of paper bound up in leather. It feels more like you're searching the skin of a body for something.
That suits him just fine, and as he flips through the pages, reading and examining, he allows his mind to reach out into the places where even other vampires cannot see. He is going to invoke the Eyes of Chaos.
Give me one moment. Alright, IB roll perception enigmas. Just debating the difficulty here. This will also be difficulty 9. Whatever you've encountered is highly resistant to investigation or revealing its secrets.
It hasn't met me before.
Wow.
And I also have the intuitive.
On this roll, I'm not going to give you intuitive, but 3 successes is still a lot. On difficulty 9. So you may ask me a direct question about the situation at hand. It can be virtually anything related to hidden truths related to this. It's related to the player directly. Okay. Metaphor and imagery. More successes give you a clearer and more complete answer.
So the question he wishes to ask is the most obvious one. What does this book have to do with the visions he's been having? What pattern can he discern?
As you draw on your gifts to see the patterns of madness and how it relates to reality as far as this book is concerned, you consider the vision of the maw. In your mind's eye, you remember that tree, the tree this girl was speaking to, was prostrating herself before, and the shadow which winds around this old gnarled tree seems to fill and superimpose upon the great canyon maw, as though the maw were filled with shadow.
That tells him a great deal.
I will let you ask 2 more questions with your 3 successes.
He'll wonder what became of the girl when the demon was banished.
As though you were back in that vision, you see it continue. You see the woman, naked, bloodied. She looks dead. In one hand she holds a halberd, and in the other you see her carrying the sorcerer, limp in her arm, flying into the night, north away from the city.
And the last question he attempts to find an answer to in these swirling patterns of chaos. Was the banishment of this demon successful, or is some part of it still in this book?
In response to you trying to focus on this question, to seek the answer to what happened, to the banishment, you hear a deep echo of grim laughter. It is an unwholesome sound. It's far away. And as you look at the last chapter of this book, detailing the success, where the author banishes this creature, the text seems to burn away in small flame, leaving the page bare, as though the text where this author banished anything was never there. laughter echoing as the words disappear.
Nicholas slams shut the book almost before he realizes he's doing it. Thin rivulet of blood running down his mouth. He's bitten through his tongue. His fangs are extended even without him realizing it, as he pulls himself from the murky blackness of madness and looks on the book in horror. You were right to fear it, Robert. But how did you come to be in possession of it?
Give me another willpower roll, difficulty 8. Current. Alright. 3 successes, more than enough. You can tell that after you close the book, your discipline ends, you stop trying to peer through the madness. It's almost like a bounce back effect, as though it tries to do the same to you, as though there is an assault on your mind. And you know from the prickling in the back of your skull, as though some kind of hand was there. There was malicious intent behind whatever it was attempting, but you managed to shrug it off.
Nicholas stands, grabbing the blankets and other pieces of cloth the book was wrapped in, and he wraps it up again. If only so that he can hide it for a while.
As you wrap it up, you cannot shake the feeling like you're almost hiding a face, like you're smothering something that's watching you. You don't feel like you're wrapping an object, you feel like you're wrapping an entity.
Then he's sure to bind it tight, in case it should have any more wicked plans. And he'll see if he can find a loose flagstone in this room, or something that he can use to hide it.
You said a loose flagstone?
Wallstone.
Yes. You look around, and after poking around, you do find a loose floorboard that actually fits nicely, and there's a little tiny crawl space, very small, but it's large enough for this bundle.
And that's where he'll hide it for the moment. He doesn't expect Robert's going to come back looking for it anytime soon. He's got plenty more work to do with it. In the meanwhile, there's some things that he has to handle tonight.
What else will Nicholas be handling?
Nothing we definitely have to open scenes for. He is a man of his word. So he will procure some foodstuffs and supplies for the cottage and pay someone to take it out to them. I'll roll resource if I need to.
Look at your resources.
It's 3.
I will have you roll resources, difficulty 5, to come up with the coin to fix up this cottage and help supply Guy to Free and whatever gathering he has. Actually 2 successes. I don't count ones on that roll. So you were definitely able to put together a perfectly acceptable package as described, which will be delivered at dawn.
His motives, of course, are selfish. If he does not do what he said he was going to do, then Guy might come looking for him, and he can't have that right now.
In the meantime, you think he'll be very pleased for the help. So that's easy enough to do, and orchestrating that will take some time in any case.
And then the last thing he wants to do is write a letter to Simone. He doesn't want to visit her in person, not now.
Alright, what will the letter say?
In essence, thank you for pointing me in the direction of the book. It is marvelous. And he'll sign it H.
Alright, do you have this delivered to Elysium, or do you go yourself?
Oh, he'll go himself, but he'll give it to one of the door guards.
Okay.
And tell them who it's for.
Alright.
And that'll pretty much take up his night doing all that.
Sounds good. So the scene will fade on Nicholas returning to his domicile. We will return to check in on Robert DeVere. Robert, you were escaping from some very unhappy pagans when, as you and Albert were riding away on Emmett, you heard and then saw that your would-be adventuring companion, Albert, caught an arrow and fell off the horse. You know, none of these people are mounted, so in the distance you got, it'll still be maybe 10 seconds before they catch up, and Albert's certainly not dead. He's obviously wounded. His arrow seems to be in his left flank, and he's kind of crying out to you, reaching out as you notice this.
Well, Robert is not in a mood to leave him behind in this case, so he will... You know what? He's... How alert is Albert? I mean, he's calling out for him, but does he look like he's alert?
Yeah, he's very alert. He's kind of screaming in pain. He's trying to crawl to you. It seems like it's very difficult for him to get up. He's like crawling quickly in your direction. It's obviously pained and difficult for him.
Alright, well, Robert's not going to leave Albert behind, so he's going to shoot a glance towards whoever shot the arrow, see if they're readying another one, see if he has time to pick up Albert and ride out with him. Does this seem possible?
Your senses are already heightened, so you can tell the man who shot the arrow in the in the far back. He has another arrow ready, but now that all the people are charging out, he's not going to risk shooting one of his maybe family members. So he has another arrow, but he's not aiming it yet. It seems like he's trying to advance to catch up.
And judging from the rate of how fast this group is moving and the distance Albert is, does it seem likely to get him before they're upon them?
If you're quick, you could probably get him up, but you'd have to be pretty quick about it. You couldn't waste any time.
Quick it is. Robert will push the limits of the blood, furthering his dexterity, and he will go and attempt that rescue of Albert.
All right. Give me a dex ride to get back to Albert, and I'm going to wrap this up into one roll that's all kind of rider related. So give me a dexterity ride, difficulty 8, to collect him and then ride off before these guys with axes catch up to him and hack him to bits. Zero successes. So you're going to get to you're going to have enough time to determine this. You're riding back, and you know if you dismount to get him up onto the horse, you will do that, and then they will arrive and be in range to attack you.
Mm-hmm.
Alternatively, you could do something else. So you haven't done that yet, but you know
okay.
You don't have enough time to do it and get away now.
How many are grouped together?
Not many. They kind of strung themselves out, running out after you. So there's only a couple, like, that are going to be within range.
Well, not wanting to lose momentum after he turned the horse around, he's going to draw his weapon and charge these first two on the horse. He's going to use celerity to make a double swing.
All right. You have a major advantage fighting from horseback. So I will need a dexterity melee, difficulty 5, if you're attacking infantry from horseback. And they weren't quite expecting this. They were just going for the guy they downed when they saw you turn away. So I'm going to let you get these couple swings off before they act.
Alright, first swing.
Alright. That's 2 successes on the first one. Wouldn't roll damage. And I should say, now that you're close, you can see them. Most of these men you can see they remind you of Sigurd in that they're pretty robust looking men of mostly blonde hair, long facial hair, clad in furs and simple cloth tunics. And most of these men up front have axes. More like hatchets. So, not really, plate armor to withstand the swing of a sword. So you can just roll damage. They won't be able to soak this.
Okay. Sword is strength plus 2, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Alright, you're going to net 3 lethal on the first one. And you get a second swing, so you can roll your dex melee. Still difficulty 5. You'll be at 1 less dice since it's a celerity action. Alright, it's going to connect. You get 1 extra success. Roll your damage. That's a pretty significant hit. 5 lethal. So the first one cuts pretty well. The second one, the man actually is downed. He's actually knocked down and bleeding quite profusely.
Okay. I assume we enter into combat now?
Yes. So if you roll initiative, I have learned from my mistakes in the past, combat really slows down when you add initiative for every individual, so I'm gonna take a cue and continue with doing mobs, acting as groups.
Okay.
So you can roll your... I'm actually just going to give you initiative, or give you the lead, because I feel like mobs as a group are not very fast.
Makes sense.
Alright, so now we're in the first round of actual combat, so I will give you that first turn, as one of these men has just been basically put out of combat. The other one is reeling from his wound and is just now getting his bearings. There are more people trickling in, but seeing that you can actually fight and that you're on horseback is a little bit intimidating to a group that's not extremely large and not very well equipped. They're a little surprised by how quickly you did that, but they're not put off yet. So what does Robert do?
All right. So well, one of them's down. What's the status of the one he only wounded? What's he doing right now?
He's, like I said, he's reeling from his attack, so he has one hand on an axe and the other one's gripping his shoulder where the cut started to go in, and he's turning about to face you. It looks like he's looking between you and Albert, and he sees that Albert's not really fighting, so you're the main threat, so he's going to try and throw his axe at you.
Alright. Well, Robert will certainly go for a strike to finish this guy off before this axe can hit him.
Alright. You roll again. You're still difficulty 5 since you're on horseback.
Okay.
Alright, 4 success. That's going to connect. That's going to kill him. So describe Robert as he turns about and finishes off this man.
Well, Robert at first was seeking to flee, but seeing Albert being dropped by an arrow has greatly upset him, and of course his cries for help are driving him further, so, he quickly turns. He does his strikes. But at this point, he's actually hungry, and the blood that is flowing is starting to drive him further. And this moment, he can't help but bring his fangs out as the spray of blood from this kill has enticed him.
Let's see what your blood is at. That's starting to get low. Give me a self-control roll, difficulty 6. You are definitely taking notice of this. No successes. You haven't botched, but unless you spend a willpower, your next action is going to be to dismount and feed off this man you just slew. Or the man who's basically dying in the ground. Fortunately, Albert's just a little bit too far away, or you think you might just feed on him.
Yeah, he has a little bit of time, so he's going to... he can't... at this moment, he's too hungry. He can't fight it. His willpower is pretty drained. He's going to go for the man that has been knocked down.
Okay, you can still see him trying to move. The gash is very deep. It's severed a lot of him. He'll be dead in hours. Probably less. But you dismount quickly and provide him much relief as you sink your fangs into him. As the rest of this mob moves in, you hear increasing calls of alarm, and you're not sure if it's rage or fear, but the sight of you feeding off of this dying man is definitely stirring them into a frenzy. So you regain 3 points in the next couple of seconds, and you know that they're going to get an attack off. I'm going to say this Albert is. He's trying to... He can't really turn very well with this arrow in his back. He's in a lot of pain. He's trying to see what's going on, but he's not really able to. So this mob is going to reach you, and they're going to get a lot of really easy hits in and start just tearing you apart if you don't pull yourself off of this person. So give me another willpower roll. Difficulty 5 now that you've fed.
Okay. Current, of course, yes?
Yes.
I feel like I should probably just spin one at this point.
What are you at?
I mean, I don't have much for willpower.
Let me see. Oh, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You're not at 0. Yeah, if you want to spend the willpower, you don't need the roll, because you didn't botch it. So after you feed some, you will yourself away from the body as the beast rages against you, wanting to pull itself back. And you can see a look of both rage and fear in the eyes of these men who are charging at you. It's going to be a group of 3 that have caught up now. But you will have a chance to go full defense if you want.
Robert will spend more blood that he has just newly acquired and enhance his dexterity 1 more point as well as boost himself for another celerity attack. He'll go full defense on these first 3 men and follow up with a strike on one of them.
Okay, with celerity you can defend and attack. So they will get their attack. The 3 of them together. Alright, 2 successes from all of them together. 6 is more than 2. You'll easily parry that. So now you'll be at 1 dice less since the celerity action, and you can make your attack. Alright, it's going to connect.
Okay.
So again, you can roll damage. They don't have enough armor to soak it, really. Alright, so you'll cut deep into one of these men. He's still going to be standing. So by this point, Albert's turned around and he's managed to crawl his way up to the reins of the horse, at least. So the horse doesn't flee. He's not strong enough to climb himself up, but at least not that far. And he is, I don't know, 20 paces behind you now.
How are the others of the mob? How close are they getting to Robert?
There's going to be one more round of you fighting these 3, and then another 3 are going to join.
Okay.
Alright. Go ahead.
Yeah, same as before. 1 blood point will be spent on strength, another celerity.
Okay, you can do that. So
And he will go start with full parry. Strike a second of the men because he wounded the first, and the first one should be a split threat.
Yeah. Alright, roll your parry. Oh, well, they're not even gonna... All you have to do is not botch, really.
Don't curse him.
Okay, yeah. They got nothing, you got 3. You'll easily parry their attacks. They're strong, certainly, but maybe not practiced at fighting someone who can actually handle a sword. Ooh. No successes on the second swing. Okay. New round, though. You still have first action.
Okay. And the other 3 are now close enough.
Yeah, now it's going to be a mob of 6, and they're going to start surrounding you.
All right. Well, Robert, at this point, noticing that he has started to become surrounded, he will realize the desperation of the situation and use a power he has not had to pull out yet, as of yet, that his grandsire used, but he will use Majesty.
Oh boy. Pulling out the big guns. Alright. You spend a willpower to activate that.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no one here supernatural and no one here naturally able to resist. So really, as soon as you draw on this gift from your bloodline, all of these men and women, you realize some of the attackers were actually women with spears. They stop. They look at you with awe and reverence. They fall to their knees. Some of them start to tear up. Weapons fall out of their hands. If you glance behind you, even Albert looks at you like a god, as everyone here has just stopped. They feel guilt. You can see it in their eyes.
But Robert himself, he is too hungry to perhaps even control himself at this point. The blood is in the air. I think rather than just being in complete awe, Robert's his monstrous features are now coming out in full force. His fangs are out, his mouth is bloody from his recent kill. He is going to inspire horror among the onlookers.
Yes, the look of awe becomes a look of terror as you take advantage of your already inhuman appearance and magnify it 1,000 times, as though these people were witnessing the devil himself. And you see as much sorrow as horror in their faces. They've all just dropped down, hoping to be spared by you.
Yet at this point, Robert is going to pull the nearest one to him and begin feeding.
The beast helps you decide, and it chooses the one you opened up. And no one dares move even as you pull this man over and begin feeding. Do you just let the beast go as you feed on this man?
I think he will at this point.
Alright. Not even trying to control it, you tear this man open with your teeth and drink deeply of him. You can regain 9 points of blood. It's a little bit less as you opened him up pretty good. And give me a self-control roll, difficulty 7, since the beast has been unchained. Even though you sated yourself, you did not try to control the beast at all. It's had more freedom than it's known in some time. No successes. You don't stop after you drain this man. Your body fills with strength, not of your own volition, but of the beast's volition. As you keep grabbing people, tearing out their throats and drinking of them, your face covered in blood. 3 more people drop dead. You can consider yourself regained on blood, but the beast is still killing people. You kill about half of these villagers. I'll let you make another roll to regain control if you want to, or you can try and regain it yourself, or rather let it go.
Robert is now at 1 willpower. I don't even think the last willpower can be spent like that, or can it?
It can be spent in life and death situations. You can roll it to regain control.
I'll go with a roll to see what happens. Difficulty 7 or 6?
This will be 6. The beast has had more than enough to fill and to enjoy the carnage. Just the taste of blood, not even the nourishment, just the taste of it. This is pure gluttony now. 1 success. You regain control as you stand over the tearful body of a woman who is cradling her infant. You've made it past everyone who was even thinking of fighting. They're all dead. Now you're actually in the village. You realize you're in between tents and there's a few dead bodies behind you. You're actually inside one of these tents and there's this woman who's, I mean, you can smell the stink of piss. She's terrified that she's going to die and her infant's going to die.
I didn't catch, is Robert actually, like, started biting into her yet?
No, you are in control just before you stop.
Okay, yeah. Robert will recoil from this sight and taking in all the sensory of being back in control, he'll actively recoil at this and just see who remains. This woman and her infant, but who else remains?
Not many. A handful of people. You see them peering out of tents. It's mostly children now. There's an old man who's... I mean, everyone is still in reverence to you. Glory lasts for the scene. And all these people are too weak-willed to hope to resist a creature like you. And so, you think, even if you left right now, this village would probably die from lack of manpower. There's no one to take care of these people anymore. It's a handful of children, an old man, and this woman, who you realize now is actually pregnant when you take a look at her.
Oof.
And
Is Robert so far gone that this doesn't take like a conscious roll?
good question. Because you let the beast go, I'm going to call this it's either a thoughtless killing, a savored exsanguination, or feeding past satiation. So right around that 3 to 2 range. I'll have you roll your conscience difficulty 7. And as a reminder, you lost a conscience since last game because of the botched conscience roll before.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I took it off.
Okay. 2 successes. Tonight, you are not dropping any further. You realize the extent of how much of a monster you really are when the beast is let go and what kind of savagery it can wreak. And you did this. You brought them to their knees with your gifts and then let the beast loose. This village will die. You already know that. Whether you kill them or you let them die to starvation, they're already dead. And that thought haunts you.
Robert can't, like, he knows, coming to this realization, he feels absolutely gut-wrenchingly, like, horrible for what he's done. He's done bad things before, but this is the highest thus far. Well, the implications is the most terrible. he certainly has been more brutal. But anyway, Robert, I don't know. He can't just leave him like this to all die. He's going to meddle further. He's going to gather up the remainders and he's going to sufficiently apply presence to just mess with their minds even more and try to get them to at least follow him somewhere of safety. Maybe another village will take them in, or maybe they can be interpreters of some sort. Maybe can learn their language. But anyway, he's going to try and salvage the situation.
All right. So like I said, you still have majesty for this scene. And you want to use presence to entrance... Go ahead.
Yeah. I want to make it a more long-lasting effect because majesty doesn't last for
forever.
a long time. Yeah. He'll start spreading blood if he has to. Like he doesn't want. He doesn't want them to just die of starvation out here.
Do you want to entrance them one by one?
I'll do that if it takes a night.
Yeah, and like I said, this is kind of at the end of traveling the night. This is where you were supposed to hold up for the day. You don't think you can make it to the next village before dawn.
Okay, yeah, he's going to have to do that and sleep and hope no one kills him as he's sleeping.
If you entrance them, you feel pretty confident they won't do that. So, let's see. These are they're pretty standard, relatively weak-willed individuals. To hope to stand against a Cainite and resist would take someone of extraordinary ability. I'm going to say you have at least a day of entrancement for each person, and it will take about 6 blood points to get them all of what remains, and that's as far as like using this on each of them, not blood bonding them. I mean, there are bodies aplenty, but
okay.
Is that what Robert's plan is? Entrance them all, stay the night, or stay the day, rather?
Yeah, that'll be the plan.
Okay. Yeah, I'll spare you the many rolls, which I'm sure you would just destroy anyway, because their willpower is pathetic. It's mostly children, as I said. So, yes. Eventually, of course, majesty does end, and you've entranced all these people, but I assume you did not entrance Albert, who is still stuck with an arrow. What do you do about him? Now, you're no doctor or physician, but you don't think he's going to do very well very long.
Well, he knows the healing property of the blood. He's going to spread it around.
That's true.
Give enough to Albert that he thinks he'll reasonably survive.
You think a few points would definitely give you confidence in this. Pulling out the arrow is a painful process. But after everything's said and done, you know that the following night, Albert, if he has not been entranced, might have some questions. Unless you entrance him as well.
Robert will be willing to listen to these questions. He's not going to further entrance Albert. Especially since he's already taken several drinks of blood by now, I'm sure.
Oh, if you continue to ghoul him, that's different. I knew you gave him one. I didn't know you continued.
Well, this would be like the next
The second
occurrence of it.
drink? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. That's true. If you're healing him, you're feeding him. So that does help things. But these thoughts will at least pass through Robert's mind as the day comes and takes him into torpor. And we will end the scene on that grim chapter in Robert's On Life. And we will check in with Elined, as we do have some time left, as I'd like to hear what she gets up to. So Elined, you had your meeting with Ellyn Alice, heard her thoughts. You return to London, is that correct?
York.
York. You want to go to York to plan with Ragna. What overall are Elined's plans for... What does she want to strategize? Where are her thoughts going?
She already knows that to get things going, the Duke needs to get back. Beyond that, well, that depends on where hostilities go from there. Furthermore, she has to check in on her Nosferatu contact and see if there's any developments.
Alright. And just as a brief reminder, you do recall that the Duke was stationed in Ireland as Lieutenant of Ireland, and that came from the King. That was known amongst the Kine, and so any movement of him back to the mainland, you presume, would have to be palatable to the Kine as well. Did you want to open up a scene to speak with Ragna about this topic?
We can do overviews if you want.
No, we can definitely do a scene, but I might open it next session if you would like to dig into that more. Otherwise,
Alright.
if you didn't
Yeah,
care
that
about
was
it,
my concern. We don't have much time for the scene.
I didn't know how much you wanted to roleplay that out versus get the overview. But we can definitely open that scene next game if you want. Alright. And I think that probably is where we will pick it up again next week, is beginning with that scene. For now, we will close the session, since we are right around that hour. And yeah, we'll pick it up again next week.